Hello. Hello. Hey guys, it's me, Delta One, here with Airsoft Talk. And today is a special video, and hi Dad. I thought it'd be better than having a card, then why not make a video? And what I wanted to do for you, Dad, is I wanted to let you know what you have done in the good times that I've had with you over my lifespan that I've had with you. And my mother's probably watching, so everyone say hi to them. And so, where do I start? My dad, he has always been adventurous, and he did tend to get under my mom's skin about what he wanted to do with us. And one of the earliest memories I have with my dad is that he took me on a bike ride, and of course he had a bigger frame bike than I did. And I mean, shoot, I don't even know if he'll remember this, but we were biking on something called the Terry Hershey Park Trail, and we were like real close to Highway 6, Dad, and I really wanted to try riding your bike. So you dropped your seat, and keep in mind I was probably 8, and I could just barely ride it, and my dad's on my little Huffy with his knees like that, and I was sitting there with this big old smile on my face, and my dad's just sitting there behind me, and people are staring at him like, that's a good dad. And that was so much fun. Another good time, Dad, that I had, even though it was so miserable, we went fishing at this lake by our house. This is when my dad was first teaching me how to fish, basically. I mean, he had taught me many times before, but this was different because it was freshwater. And it was mating season for ducks. And my dad woke me up, I think it was in February. It was 36 degrees, and here in Texas, we aren't familiar with 36 degrees. So I'm sitting there on the end of this pier covered in duck crap. And I'm sitting there holding this pole just shivering, and these ducks just won't shut the hell up. Oh my God. And we're sitting there, we didn't catch crab. We sat there for like 4 hours. He woke me up at like 6:30, and finally 11 o'clock comes around. It was overcast, and finally my dad just like flipped out, and he was like, I hate these ducks. And finally just said, to hell with this, let's go home. And so I was like, alright. Another thing that I really liked, Dad, that you showed me was when he said, hey, this is a cast net. This is how you catch bait. And we were in Florida. We were in Pensacola. That's where I grew up with family vacations, and had family there at the time. And I was, after he showed me how to throw it, that's all I did from all hours of the day. From 7 o'clock to probably 10 at night, I would throw a 3-foot cast net all day. And finally he said, you know what, I was like, I think I was in like 2nd grade, I'm throwing this 3-foot cast net. So I go back the next year, and he buys me a 6-footer, and my God, that thing was so much heavier. My head barely was above the railing on the pier, and I threw that thing all day, and people would sit and watch me, and they were like, Jesus, like I could throw a cast net so far that it would close up before it hit the water when I was that young. And I mean, I would throw that thing all day, not catch anything, keep throwing it. And it was just so cool. Then there was another time, one of my fun memories with my father, he took me to this place called Brazos Bend, which is a kind of like a sanctuary for like animals, and they have a bunch of like alligators, and it's a good hour drive from here, but we went out there and bike riding. I mean, you can bike. There's no like safety rails or anything like that. I mean, you bike like feet from like 9-foot gators. And you know, we biked down there. They had these like huge observation towers, like if you were to get chased by one, that was like a safe place you could go to. And he took me there, and you know, I got to see like hedgehogs and stuff, like just real cool stuff. And Like, it was just so memorable because we were grilling, and he would make me burgers. But to sidetrack a little bit, I was always very skeptical of my dad making burgers, because when my mom went, I don't know, she went on vacation somewhere when I was a kid, and he made burgers for my sister and I, and we were like, oh yeah, burgers, we don't ever get burgers, blah 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 blah, yeah, burgers. My dad had put onions all in the burger meat, and so we took a big bite out of this burger, and we were like, oh, this is so terrible, oh my god, this is horrible. So my dad's sitting there like making burgers, and I'm sitting there like, my dad's like, what are you doing? I don't want any onions in my burger. Just making sure you're not throwing them in somewhere. My dad just got a big old kick out of that. And it was funny because gators, for y'all that, I don't know, I'm sure there's some people here that don't, you know, normally know gator, but gators growl. And we were out there at night. Like, you could be out there at night, and man, they would hiss at each other, growl at each other, and these people are out on this pier, and we're sitting there, and then you just hear them growling and moving, and you can't see them. And so they shine a light, and you just see like eyes surrounding this pier. And me and my dad are like, ooh, ooh. And it was just so cool. And, you know, I'm so blessed to have a dad that you know, would show me these cool things. But fishing was always fun with my dad. There was never a dull moment, except for the time I took his brand new spin caster and I didn't know how to use it, and like I tangled it all up, and we were on vacation. I spent like 3 hours as a punishment, and he was like, you have to untangle all of this. And it was a pain. It was a pain. It wasn't even my fault. It was the buddy I made friends with a kid, and he was the one who did it. I didn't. He was like, here, this is how you do it, and he screwed it up. So I ended up taking the hit for that one. Now maybe you'll believe me, Dad. I remember that. But it was just my dad. He was so keen on showing me, like, hey, look at this. Like, he would show me all sorts of cool wildlife stuff, and I never really appreciated it after, you know, you get old enough to where you're like, you know, oh, let's hang out with buddies and stuff, and like, you know, let's break stuff, you know, being the kid that you are. And I remember for his 50th birthday, we went to a state fishery or whatever, and they had like catfish that were like, you know, 365 pounds, like just behemoths. They had a 14.7 pound bass at the fishery, or whatever it's called, and they had a lake that was just stocked with thousands of catfish. It was ridiculous. And I remember we were sitting there fishing, and there was this old couple behind us, and I mean, they were old. They were probably in their like late to mid 60s, and he was like, "You're not gonna catch anything with stink bait." And I just looked. He was like, and I heard, me and my dad heard him say, "I bet you $1 he doesn't catch shit." And so, no joke, 10 seconds after I cast, my line just goes, and like I'm fighting this fish for probably just 2 minutes, but it seemed like forever. Being the kid that I was, so I was, shoot, if that was, so that's 11, I was 13 at the time. So I was too impatient. I hadn't fished in a while, and so I turned around and I looked at the guy, and my dad was like, "What are you doing?" And I said this, and I walked up to him and I said, "You owe your wife $1." I know you said I wouldn't hook up anything, and I heard you say it. My dad just laughed, and the guy pulled out his wallet and handed his wife $1, and so my dad thought that was hysterical. And I know this is a random memory, Dad, but I remember when I was like, "Yeah, let's go to IHOP" on the way back, and this guy, we ended up actually cutting off this guy, and that was the first time I ever heard my dad say the F word. I don't know why that stuck with me. But nah, another good memory was when we had this bike trail, and they were constructing it. They were demolishing a pathway, so they had to take down a bunch of trees, and for like, I guess to meet code, they had to I'd take out a huge portion, but there were these huge great oaks, and we were sitting there, and my dad would give us Vienna sausage when we were kids, you know, because we were out there, and it was just easy, you know. And so me and my sister sit eating there, and then all of a sudden, my dad just says, look, points up at this huge oak tree where the top, there's like no branches, just huge oak tree. You know, just the base that, you know, just goes straight up, and there's this huge hole. I mean, it must have been like, you know, this big, like no joke, at least 2.5 feet, you know, wide, and this huge owl, and I'm talking huge. Like, the owl must have been at least 3 feet tall, and the wingspan was massive. And it flew down and dive bombed us, but didn't do anything. And like I screamed. I was a little kid. I think it was like 6 at the time. And I was, you know, that was new to me, and that's what I loved, Dad. That you put me out of my comfortability zone, and you've always pushed me to do that, to do new things. And so that's something I really appreciate, Dad, that you did. And my dad was real keen on. I hope I'm using that word right. You know. He's like, hey, check out this turtle, you know, hey, look, there's a worm. And so there was this house that had like flagstone, you know, around the trees, and so me and my buddy that lived down the street were flipping them over and like collecting worms and stuff. And so I forget what type of snake it was, but I pick it up and I say, hey, Dad, check out this big worm. And it ended up being a cottonmouth, or something like that. It was a comment, and my dad was like, put the snake down, and my mom was just pitch white in the face, like freaking out. And so that was pretty fun. My dad tells me about that all the time, how that was funny. And then another good time was when we went fishing at that lake where I told you about the ducks. He ended up, I caught like a little itty bitty catfish, threw him back, and so he hooks up something, and it's like real sluggish and slow, and so he finally, you know, breaks the surface. I mean, this thing, it was a snapping turtle, and it was probably about this big. Like, I mean, it was, no, because it fit in a 5-gallon bucket. Okay, well, when I was a kid, it seemed that big, but it barely fit in a 5-gallon bucket, because that's how we got it home. And so my dad like brought it home. We didn't get the hook out of the mouth until we got home, because, you know, we didn't have, you know, distance. You know, I'm not screwing with him. My dad was like, we're not screwing with this turtle here. We're gonna take it home. So we took it home, and so we're outside and we're showing all the neighbors, and my dad takes like sticks, like, you know, like huge sticks like this thick, and just starts like putting it in his mouth and like chomping it. And so scaring the death out of my mom, because my dad picked it up, because he actually bravely, you know, put the hand, you know, on top of its neck, picked it up, and was like, check it out. And so my mom was like, Bob, put it down now. So we got like huge channel lock pliers, so we could get the hook out, and it snapped at the pliers, and it put a dent in it. Like, we were just like I mean, my dad knew they, you know, snapper turtles have, yeah, strong. And you know, that always caught us by surprise, and you know, we went back and released it. But I mean, that was real cool. As a kid, I was like, man, that's cool. You know, my dad taught me how to fish, and that's probably one of the coolest things he's ever taught me how to do. And recently, he bought 2 Hobie kayaks so we could go kayak fishing, because I got back into fishing. And Dad, I can't tell you how much that means to me. Like, I was so surprised. I negotiated our price down. I'm not going to say how much we paid, but I got us a pretty awesome deal, and I was so happy to get that, and you know, to share that with my father again is just such a big deal to me. I was so proud, because this past June or July was the first time I actually got to go fishing with my father in almost 15 years. And I was 2 miles out in my kayak, and I hooked up just a little itty bitty speckled trout. I mean, it was like 18 inches. It wasn't anything fantastic. And I was 2 miles out because we couldn't take both of them, because we didn't have the trailer done yet, because these kayaks are 14 feet long by 38 inches wide and weigh 140 pounds with nothing on them. When they're fully loaded with like just the seat and the drive, it's like 165. So the weight limit on the car, and plus, you know, all that nonsense. But I was 2 miles out, and I was so happy that I kayaked all the way back to shore. And I was like, Dad, look what I got a fish. I was like, yeah. And so my dad's always been the one that fillets stuff, because that's how he put himself through college. He back when gill netting was legal, which is where you take a big giant net and it hangs down like, I don't know, 8 feet, by like 100 yards wide. That used to be legal, but people overfished and it killed fishing populations. So that's how he put himself through college. Is, you know, not through college, but that's how he put food on the table. You know, and he you know, showed me everything when it came to fishing, and so that was just so, it made me feel so good that I could go back and, you know, be proud, like, Dad, look what I caught, like, yeah, like, you taught me this. And it was actually using a bait that he would never use, because we didn't believe in rattle traps until now. And so, like, to share that with my father is just something that's so close to me and so close to my heart, and I love it. And you know, my dad has always been there for me, you know, and he worked very hard for us to be better off than he was when he was a kid. And you know, and I just want to say, Dad, I appreciate you working so hard and being such a great father, and taking care of us and pushing us to do things that we normally wouldn't, even though we cried, moaned, and threw temper tantrums. You know, it was just so, I look back at it now and it's just like, man, why didn't I do more of this stuff when I was a kid? Like, I just don't get it. But I mean, it was great. What was another thing? I was on the tip of my tongue. My dad was big on just, you know, me being outside, and I had pedal cars and stuff, and so he got real scared one time because we took it down some hills, and I was just doing, like, you know, 1080 spins, because you could control it with like 2 handles like that, and I would just lock them up and go like that and be like, woo. And I was big on wagons, and I remember one time when I went, there was like an S downhill turn, and I could pull the handle back and control where I was going. I was sitting in the wagon, and what I didn't know is that it was sliding, and it wasn't getting traction because they were hard plastic wheels, and so that freaked him out, which was pretty funny. But man, there's so many good times I've shared with my father, and I just want to say thank you, Dad, for that, and for everything you've taught me. When we bought my first car, which was a 1970 MGB GT, look it up. He took me and we went, and we took like 3 trips out to this guy's house, from Houston to San Antonio, and this guy had a gold mine, and he bought me that first car. And when we finally got it, at this church I'd go to, we'd have stand up and celebrate. And so basically what I did is I had spent literally over like a month, you know, the whole time he told me he was getting me a car, a month, thinking how I could stand up at church and say thank you. And you know, he knew I was going to stand up and say, yeah, I got a first car. And I didn't stand up and celebrate that. I stood up and celebrated my thanks and appreciation of my father. And my dad isn't one to, you know, have a tear come down. He's more like a Clint Eastwood type of guy. And it caught him off, you know, by surprise. And you know, I remember saying, I was like, I'm celebrating the fact that my dad bought me my first car. And Dad, I told him, I said, Dad, I want to tell you how much it means to me, and that, you know, I've always dreamed of having my first car, and how much it meant. And I just want to tell you, Dad, that I love you and I appreciate it. And I broke the little Clint Eastwood there for a moment. There was a little water in the eye, you know. And that was a memory I'll never forget. And God, the adventure we went on to get that car was just nuts. The guy's name was Ralph, and we asked him if he had a dog. You're like, hey, what's your dog's name? And so the dog was like, I don't know, 20 yards away, and he goes, hey, dog. Dog ran over. My dad and I just started laughing. He was a pretty interesting character. I mean, we had trouble keeping up with him. The dude was like 88, and we were going up and down hills, like, and he's like walking, and we're like, you know, speed walking to keep up with this guy. And I was like, Jesus. Me and my dad got a big kick out of that. And my dad also forced me to go to a place called Pho 21, which is Vietnamese. I probably pronounced that wrong. And I remember Pho kicked and screamed, and now that's my favorite food in the world. So like, I always, like, now that my dad tells me, like, hey, you should try this, I'm like, all right. I'll try it. You know, so my dad always pushed me to try new things, and that's what I've been doing to myself recently, is just trying new things, even if I don't find interest in them, to try it. And my dad's work ethic is, you know, show up early. I learned that from him, and work your butt off. Just work your butt off. Have good attendance, show up on time, and I learned that from my father. He's one of the hardest workers I know. Go in on a Saturday just because it needed to get done, just because you didn't want to be there on Monday till, you know, all hours of the night. You know, and he worked really, really hard to get where he is, and I just want to say, Dad, thank you. Thank you for being a dad. Thank you for being a dad that I can be proud to say I love you, and I really appreciate it. I love you very dearly, and I wanted to wish you a really good happy birthday, and I figured this would be a better way than giving you a birthday card. And guys, if y'all could all do me a favor and wish my dad a happy birthday, I'd really appreciate it. And guys, thanks for watching, and Dad, I love you, and happy birthday.